This is Rainy Night Horrors. Outside, the storm brews, and with it comes something darker. Every drop masks a sound, every shadow holds a shape. You're not imagining it, you're hearing the truth. Listen closely. It's already here. A violence of fractured timber ripped me from sleep. One disoriented heartbeat, a phantom limb of dream. Then, the voices, low, graveled, utterly alien beside my wife. In that instant, the fragile peace of our secluded idyll shattered, revealing the nightmare beneath. Months Alara and I had sculpted this escape. A week suspended in time, nestled within a remote cabin's embrace. No tether to the digital clamor, no echo of the city's relentless pulse. Just us, rediscovering forgotten rhythms. We'd unearthed this sanctuary online. A timbered heart deep within the pines, miles from any semblance of town, promising the kind of solitude found only in faded photographs. We arrived as Friday bled into dusk, the sun painting the tree line in strokes of fire and farewell. The cabin itself exhaled rustic charm, a haven of weathered wood and stone, its vast fireplace promising warmth against the encroaching wild. Windows framed vistas of unending forest. Unpacking, I drank in the quiet, a profound stillness broken only by the avian chorus and the sibilance of wind through evergreen needles. It felt sacred, inviolable. That first evening unfolded like a half-remembered youth. We traced meandering trails, fingers interlaced, the forest floor soft beneath our feet. Later, cocooned by firelight, a shared bottle of wine loosened laughter and conversation that flowed with an ease years had stolen. We were adrift, gloriously alone in the vast indifferent woods, a fragile illusion soon to be torn apart. The violation occurred our second night. Exhausted from a day spent scaling sun-dappled slopes, we'd surrendered early to sleep. The hour remains indistinct, lost somewhere in the deep velvet folds past midnight, when the jarring sound first intruded. A branch striking the roof, perhaps. Wishful thinking, instantly dispelled by the guttural murmurings that turned my blood to ice. "The bedroom," rasped a whisper, sharp with urgency. "Quiet now." A gentle pressure on Alara's shoulder, my finger pressed to my lips, conveyed the unspeakable. Her pupils bloomed with primal terror as the floorboards outside groaned under approaching weight. A frantic gesture under the bed, and I melted into the shadows behind the door, my pulse hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, surely loud enough to betray us. Slowly, agonizingly, the door swung inward, breath held captive in my lungs, every sinew coiled tight. A silhouette filled the frame, tall, imposing, cradling the unmistakable shape of a shotgun. Thought evaporated, replaced by raw, adrenalized instinct. I hurled my weight against the door, slamming it into the intruder. A choked grunt of pain, surprise. He staggered, the weapon tumbling from his grasp, with a dull thud on the wooden floor. I lunged, my hand closing over the chillingly smooth metal, just as he fought for balance. We became a tangle of limbs, a frantic ballet of desperation on the rough-hewn floor. "What's that racket?" Another voice bellowed from the main room. "Silas, You good? With a final desperate heave, I wrenched the shotgun free, scrambling upright, leveling it at my assailant. He froze, hands instinctively rising. Stay put, I commanded, the words jagged, unsteady. Alara, out. Now, we're leaving. She emerged from beneath the bed, a wraith pale with fear. Beyond the doorway, heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed through the cabin's main space. Hold on, the man on the floor. Silas hissed, his tone low, conspiratorial. You don't get it. We ain't here for you. Just need a place. Lie low. Silence, I snapped, the borrowed authority fragile. Ilara, phones, keys, go. But as she reached for the nightstand, the doorway disgorged two more shadows, metallic glints in their grasp. The shotgun swung towards them, my finger trembling on the trigger. Easy, friend, easy, one shouted, hands placating. Let's just breathe. The air crackled. Me, clutching the unwieldy shotgun. Ilara, a fragile shield behind me. Three grim figures barring our escape. Sweat traced cold paths down my temples. The gun felt impossibly heavy, my arm beginning to quiver. Look, said the one who radiated command. No trouble wanted. We hit a snag, need to vanish for a day, maybe two. You let us stay, keep your mouth shut. Everybody walks. Simple. A bark of disbelieving laughter escaped me. Break in, armed to the teeth, and expect a welcome mat. Who in God's name are you? He sighed, the barrel of his own weapon dipping slightly. Want the whole story? Fine. Bank job. Town. Gone sideways. Need the heat to cool. That's the long and short. The words struck like physical blows. Bank robbers. Not random thugs, but desperate professionals. This remote sanctuary had become our prison. This couldn't be real. Please, Alara's voice was a threadbare whisper behind me. Let us go. We won't say anything. Promise. The leader shook his head, a gesture devoid of malice, but utterly final. Can't risk it. Cops. But we're not monsters. Sit tight. Play nice. This blows over fast. No choice. Outnumbered. Outmatched. Even with the shotgun that felt more like a liability than an asset. Slowly, deliberately, I lowered the weapon. Good thinking, the leader approved. Right then, living room powwow. Silas, tie him up. Not too tight. The hours that followed dissolved into a surreal tableau. Alara and I, tethered to the worn sofa, wrists chafing against the coarse rope, became unwilling spectators as these men colonized our temporary haven. They plundered our provisions, devoured our food, punctuated their tense arguments about logistics and escape routes with swigs from our wine. Their names surfaced amidst the friction. Silas, the brute I'd fought. Marcus, the calculating leader. And Leo, the youngest, his eyes wide with something akin to regret. Unease radiated from them. The robbery, I gleaned, had deviated violently from plan. Whispers of gunfire, an exploding dye pack tainting the loot. As dawn painted long, spectral fingers across the cabin floor, a desperate strategy began to form. Leo. He flinched at raised voices, his gaze drifting towards Alara and me, etched with a discomfort that seemed genuine. If I could isolate him, appeal to the fissure of doubt I sensed within him. Opportunity arrived mid-morning. Marcus and Silas ventured outside, scouting the perimeter, leaving Leo as our reluctant guardian. The moment the door clicked shut, I pitched my voice low, calm. Leo, you don't belong with them, do you? How did you end up in this mess? He started, eyes darting towards me like a spooked animal. It's needed the cash. Marcus promised. Quick, easy. Didn't know. It's not too late, I urged, pressing the advantage. Help us. Get us out. We tell the police you were coerced. You could walk away from this. Conflict warred visibly across his young face. He gnawed nervously at his lower lip. A fragile seed of hope began to sprout within me. Then the door creaked open. Marcus re-entered, his presence instantly extinguishing the flicker of connection. Leo retreated into silence. Time stretched thin, each second an eternity, measured in the creak of floorboards and the robbers' agitated murmurs. Bathroom breaks were granted under armed escort. Water and dry crackers constituted our sustenance. Their frayed nerves manifested in constant bickering. Fragments drifted. A rendezvous, a boat, an escape route, a fading chance. Night fell again, thick and suffocating, leaching the last dregs of hope. Who would even know we were missing? We broadcast our blissful disconnection for a week. By the time concern solidified into alarm, it could be fatally late. Then, sometime after the second midnight descended, the world shifted. A sound, thin at first, then undeniably clear. The distant, keening cry of police sirens. The robbers froze, masks of disbelief cracking into raw panic. How? Marcus snarled, snatching his weapon, his glare pinning Leo. You little snake, you made a call? Leo shook his head violently. No, swear to God, Marcus, I didn't. Amidst their frantic accusations, Alara's glance met mine, infinitesimal, yet conveying worlds. Her wrist, the watch. While their attention had lapsed earlier, she triggered its emergency SOS. Help, improbable and terrifyingly real, was converging on our location. Chaos erupted. Marcus and Silas scrambled for guns and money bags, poised for flight. Leo remained rooted, paralyzed by indecision. Louder now, the siren screamed through the trees. In the whirlwind of confusion, my wrists screamed, but the rope gave. Hands free, I lunged for the shotgun they'd carelessly propped against the wall. Nobody move. The shout tore from my throat as I swung the weapon towards them. A heartbeat of absolute stillness. Then Marcus raised his pistol, aiming squarely at my chest. I saw his finger whiten on the trigger, squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable end. The gunshot's roar was concussive in the confined space, but the expected agony never came. My eyes flew open. Marcus lay crumpled, clutching a bleeding shoulder. Above him stood Leo, trembling, the small automatic-looking alien in his grasp. "Couldn't," Leo choked out, voice fractured. "Couldn't let him kill you." The ensuing moments blurred. The cabin erupted in flashing lights and authoritative shouts as police flooded the space. Alara and I were guided outside, swaddled in coarse blankets, the chill deeper than the night air. Paramedics murmured reassurances as the adrenaline ebbed, leaving violent tremors in its wake. In the days that followed, reality reasserted itself through the sterile filter of police stations and endless statements. The robbery had indeed gone awry. A guard wounded, though not mortally. Leo's confession, corroborating our account, earned him leniency his accomplices wouldn't receive. We returned home, to a space both familiar and irrevocably altered. Loud noises made us flinch. Sleep offered little refuge. Yet, paradoxically, the crucible had forged something new between us. Facing the abyss together had fused us with an unbreakable alloy. We never returned to that cabin in the woods, but sometimes, caught in the quiet cadence of ordinary days, our eyes meet, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. We remember the terrifying fragility of peace, the razor-thin membrane separating sanctuary from danger, and we hold each other closer, fiercely grateful for the unassuming gift of normalcy, knowing with chilling certainty how swiftly, how irrevocably everything can change. Heat shimmered off the asphalt that blistering Saturday, a visible wave pulling me toward the sprawling promise of the used furniture fair. I drifted aimlessly, seeking no particular quarry, content to wander among the ghosts of other people's homes, manifest as scarred tables and lamps with weary shades. Then, a shock of color snagged my eye. Deep jewel tones, vibrant amidst the dust and decay. It was a Persian rug, folded like a kept secret upon a stark metal rack, huddled near collapsing towers of cardboard boxes. Inquiry yielded little from the vendor, a man whose indifference seemed baked onto his sun-leathered face. "Old," he murmured. "Good condition mostly, save for a small stain dead center." A shrug dismissed it. The price was negligible, an afterthought. Impulse, not prudence, sealed the transaction. Hefting it toward my car revealed an unexpected density. A sharp complaint flared in my lower back as I grappled with the tightly woven, thick-piled burden. Leaning over the trunk, maneuvering its folded edges into the confined space, I caught its scent, not merely the dry, historical breath of aged textiles, but something else beneath, a faint, unsettlingly organic undertone I couldn't place and chose to ignore. Old fabric, I told myself, nothing more. At home, unfurled across the modest geography of my living room, it dominated, its intricate borders a mesmerizing tapestry of midnight blues and claret reds, but the center commanded attention. There, stark against the geometry, lay the stain, less a spill, more an absence, a crude silhouette etched into the fibers in a faded brownish gray. It suggested a human form, roughly 4 feet in length, distorted, as if bleach had ghosted an outline onto the wool. A discernible thickening at the top hinted at a head. Disquiet prickled beneath my skin. A faint tremor I rationalized as a reaction to the sheer oddity of the blemish, a peculiar scar from its long, unknown history. That first night, the rug remained, a dark island on the floor. From my bedroom doorway, shadows pooled around it. A final glance before extinguishing the light. A fleeting chill. The air conditioning vent, perhaps. Sleep arrived, but fitfully. Around the profound stillness of 3 a.m., I surfaced, skin clammy, sheets damp. A formless dread clung to me, the residue of unremembered nightmares. Then, a whisper of sound from the living room, the soft friction of heavy fabric shifting against the floorboards. Breath held captive, heart hammering a frantic tattoo against my ribs. The house settling, a draft slipping through a window crack. I wrestled rational thought onto the throne of fear, lay back down, but sleep kept its distance for another hour's tense vigil. Morning light stripped the shadows away, revealing the rug unchanged. The stain persisted, that unsettling map of something vaguely human, no larger, no more defined. Barefoot, the pile felt substantial, ordinary beneath my soles. The nocturnal noises resolved into phantoms conjured by fatigue. Coffee, breakfast, the comforting rituals of normalcy. Attempts to build a bulwark against the unease that lingered like a low-grade fever. Yet, throughout the day, my gaze snagged on it involuntarily. Peripheral vision seemed to catch fleeting impressions, a subtle deepening of the outline, a flicker at its edge, but direct scrutiny confirmed only faded wool. I busied myself with errands, laundry, distractions, against a growing internal hum of anxiety. Evening bled through the windows, softening edges. Scrolling numbly through my phone on the couch, my eyes kept returning, drawn by a morbid gravity, to the rug. Once, I could have sworn the outline twitched, a minute tremor rippling through the threads. A sickening lurch in my stomach propelled me upward. I stabbed at the light switch, flooding the room with harsh illumination. Under the glare, the stain lay placid, inert, mocking my jumpiness. Light off, back to the couch. 10 minutes crawled by. Then, in the dimness, a subtle instability, as if the very edges of the sepia silhouette quivered. Tension seized my neck and shoulders. A fine tremor started in my hands. Unable to reconcile sight and sense, I fled the living room, retreating behind my closed bedroom door, the frantic pulse in my ears drowning out the silence. The second night offered a crueler reprise. Awakening near the same hour, a deeper chill traced my spine. My throat felt constricted, jaw clamped tight, mouth arid. An irresistible compulsion drew me back to the living room. Lamp on. The outline waited, silent, watchful under the light. Gooseflesh pebbled my arms despite the stillness. My own breathing sounded ragged, amplified in the quiet room. I circled the rug, a wary orbit, searching for any alteration, any shift. Nothing. It remained as it was. Eventually, extinguishing the lamp felt like surrender. Sleep, when it finally came, was thin and brittle. By the third dawn, passivity felt dangerous. I unearthed a tape measure from a cluttered drawer. Methodically, I stretched it across the stain, approximating head to foot, 4 feet. Across the suggested shoulders, roughly 2 feet. I scribbled the numbers onto a discarded envelope. The workday offered a temporary reprieve. Upon returning home, the ritual demanded repetition, measurement, 4 feet, and perhaps half an inch more. The width, too, seemed fractionally greater. Operator error, my own unsteady hand. Subsequent measurements yielded maddeningly slight variations, refusing to align perfectly with the morning's record. A cold knot tightened low in my gut. I resolved to cleanse it. Sponge, warm water, soap. Kneeling, I scrubbed at the discolored heart of the rug. The stain held fast, seemingly embedded in the very soul of the fibers. Then, a low, resonant hum vibrated up my arm, emanating from beneath my hand. Not a surface tremble, but a deep thrumming, like a dormant current stirred to life within the weave. I snatched my hand back as if burned, pulse hammering, ears ringing. Hesitantly, I pressed the sponge down again. Silence. Had I imagined it? Was it merely the tremor of my own anxiety made tangible? The ambiguity was its own peculiar torture. That night, sleep was a besieged fortress. Closing my eyes conjured vivid tableaus, the stain blooming, viscous limbs unfurling, a face resolving from the muted threads. Each time, my eyes snapped open, scanning the shadowed doorway, straining to hear over the blood rushing in my ears. Once, a distinct sound. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Brittle fingernails drawing lines on wood. My breath hitched. Vermin? Or it? The ensuing silence felt heavier, pregnant with unseen potential. A tense reconnaissance mission to the living room yielded nothing but stillness. The rug, a dark, accusing presence on the floor. Fourth morning, the tape measure felt heavy in my hand. 4 feet, 2 inches. My scalp prickled. Width undeniably increased. Enough. It had to go. I gripped the rug's edges, intending to roll it tightly. It resisted, clinging to the floor with an impossible, leaden weight far exceeding my memory of its heft. Muscles screamed in protest. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Folding it felt grotesque. The central stain buckling inward like a fractured spine, churning my stomach. After 10 minutes of grunting exertion, I wrestled it into a thick cylinder. I hauled it, staggering, to the garage, dumped it unceremoniously in a corner, and retreated indoors, gulping air like a drowning man. That evening, the bare living room floor felt cold, exposed. I attempted a movie, but the screen held no focus. Every creak of the house structure, every sigh of the wind became magnified, suspect. The ordinary silence, punctuated only by the refrigerator's low drone, felt stretched thin, brittle. Restlessness gnawed. I surrendered early, seeking refuge in bed. Then, inevitably, 3 a.m., I woke gasping, the bedroom air glacial despite the sealed windows. A muffled thump echoed from the garage. Nausea surged, hot and acrid. Flashlight beam cutting a trembling path. I forced myself to the connecting door. My hand shook as it closed on the knob. Darkness yielded to the light sweep. The rug lay there, still rolled, exactly as I'd left it. No intruder, nothing disturbed. Yet, emanating from the vicinity of the rug, a palpable warmth, an unnatural heat radiating outwards, prickling my skin. I backed away slowly, secured the lock, the tumblers clicking unnervingly loud in the stillness. Morning brought a fragile, desperate rationality. Sell it, donate it, throw it away, anything. Yet the thought of handling it again induced a visceral reluctance. Steeling myself, I entered the garage, forced myself to unroll the rug onto the cold concrete for one final assessment. The change was immediate, undeniable. The outline had stretched, elongated, reaching nearly 4.5 feet. The shape was more distinct now, the upper corners solidifying into something akin to shoulders, the suggestion of arms nascent. A faint, cloying odor arose, metallic, tinged with the scent of rot. Gooseflesh tightened my arms. Speed became imperative. I dragged it across the concrete, the friction a rasping scream, its weight seemingly greater still. Wrestling it into the trunk was a frantic, clumsy battle, scraping paint, fraying nerves. Finally, the trunk lid slammed shut, a punctuation mark on my desperation. Breathing hard, I drove to a local thrift store, the anonymous facade a beacon of hope. Inside, I feigned casual indifference, mumbled about donation, a curt nod, a flimsy receipt. I fled, the sense of release sharp, intoxicating. 2 days passed under a truce of fragile peace. Then, returning from work, I pushed open my front door and my world fractured. It was back, unrolled, scented, occupying the living room floor as if it had never departed. My heart slammed against my ribs, threatening to crack them. My knees buckled. A dizzying wave of heat washed over me, stealing my breath. Impossible. Doors locked, keys secure, no conceivable point of entry. And the figure, larger. 5 feet now, the silhouette starkly, undeniably humanoid. Defined shoulders, a distinct neck, a rounded prominence suggesting a head. Bile clawed at my throat. My thoughts scattered like frightened birds. I backed away slowly, retreating down the hall, eyes locked on the impossible, malevolent presence. My phone felt alien in my trembling hand. Camera app open, recording from the relative safety of the hallway. Zooming in, the screen showed only the rug, the stain, static and menacing. Waiting. A minute stretched into an eternity. Then a flicker. Along the outline's edge, a visible tremor, a subtle contraction and expansion of the weave itself. My heart hammered violently. Darkness encroached at the edge of my vision. Call the police? Report what? A haunted textile. My intruder was woven from wool and malice. From the kitchen, I retrieved scissors, the cold metal inadequate against the rising tide of dread. Back in the living room, kneeling, legs threatening to fold beneath me, I attacked an edge. The fibers were incredibly dense, resisting the blades. A small, ragged incision was my only victory after several minutes of sawing, breathless effort. Then, a sound, low, liquid, a guttural ripple like choked laughter, or perhaps just the tearing fabric. The scissors clattered from my nerveless fingers. Retreat again. An old blanket unearthed from the closet, flung haphazardly over the rug, hiding the shape, but not its palpable presence. The couch offered scant refuge, my spine pressed hard against the cushions, seeking solidity. My mind raced, a frantic hamster wheel, searching for non-existent exits. 9:12 p.m. The television droned, unheard. My gaze kept returning to the shrouded form on the floor, a subtle shifting beneath the blanket, a soft rustle, an undulation of the fabric, as if something stirred beneath. My chest constricted. I could only stare, frozen, barely breathing, until my eyes burned from the strain of not blinking. Eventually, instinct drove me to the bedroom. The click of the lock was a pathetic, symbolic gesture. I slid down the wall, back against the cool plaster, body racked with fine tremors, cold sweat soaking through my shirt, counting breaths, seeking an anchor in the maelstrom of fear. Hours dissolved in a fugue state. Sleep, when it finally claimed me, was shallow, porous. Then, the sound that severed the last thread of hope. Soft, insistent, dragging, fabric whispering against the wood of my bedroom door. Shh, shh. Ice formed in my veins. I waited, paralyzed, for the splintering crash, the turning knob, but silence returned, absolute, profound. The sound retreated, leaving behind only the deafening echo of pure terror. Now, I exist in the waiting. The stain, no, the figure, continues its silent, inexorable gestation. I picture it achieving verticality, peeling itself away from the warp and weft, standing upright. These waking nightmares are my constant companions. Tangible proof remains elusive. Fleeting glimpses, unsettling feelings, ambiguous sounds, easily rationalized in the light of day. Yet the certainty of its presence, its slow becoming, is a suffocating weight, intensifying as darkness falls. This morning's measurement, 5 feet, 3 inches. The arms are more clearly delineated, the head shape disturbingly refined. Disposal is futile. It returns. Destruction is impossible. It resists. Understanding is a luxury I surrendered long ago. It grows. That is the only immutable truth, and I dread the culmination, the moment it reaches its final intended stature. What happens then? Will the outline remain, an empty husk, its occupant finally free to move among the shadows of my home? I relay this not for pity, nor to invite disbelief, but as a testament, a desperate chronicle penned before whatever comes next. How long can this fragile standoff endure? Each creak of the floorboards, each shift of the settling house, now sounds like its approach. The figure on the rug is no longer just a stain. It is an unfolding event. It is patient, and I remain, trapped in this house, caught between the terror of watching its relentless progress and the sheer impossibility of looking away. My hands tremble constantly. The very air feels thick, heavy with its impending completion. Inch by terrifying inch, it grows, and I wait. The cabin materialized through the vapor as Elias coaxed the car up the final rutted incline, the air outside thick and clinging as wet wool. Mist, a persistent shroud across the hills, muffled the world. Only the smell of sodden leaves pierced the quietude of the long ascent. His hands, cramped claws from gripping the wheel, ached as he cut the engine. He stepped out, the dampness instantly seeping into his jacket, and faced the structure's aged timber door. A moment's hesitation, a breath held against nervous anticipation. Then he pushed inward. Darkness welcomed him, a cool, earthy embrace, before he fumbled for the switch, summoning a weak yellow glare from a single overhead bulb. It revealed a cavernous main room, flanked by a diminutive kitchen alcove and a narrow, almost vertical staircase ascending to a loft. Skeletal furniture hugged the walls, draped in shadow. Beneath his heavy boots, the floorboards groaned a weary protest. The place felt untenanted, suspended in time, yet mercifully free of vandalism. Elias dropped his duffel, testing the sturdiness of a nearby armchair. It listed precariously. Dust lay like fine gray snow on every surface, a testament to neglect. And near the weeping window panes, the faint, sharp scent of mildew bloomed. He traced a line across a tabletop. His fingertip came away smudged dark. In the kitchen corner, the faucet coughed and spat before yielding a reluctant trickle of water. The stove was archaic, its enamel chipped, the cupboards holding little more than a forlorn scattering of plates and mugs, chipped but seemingly scrubbed clean. Turning, his gaze settled on the staircase. Each tread uttered a distinct, dry pop as he ascended into the loft. A cramped, low-ceilinged space dominated by a bare metal bed frame, stripped of its mattress. Beside it, another door, smaller, doubtless leading to attic crawl space or forgotten storage. He tried the handle. It refused to turn, jammed fast. No matter. He hadn't come here to pry secrets loose, only to unravel his own thoughts in solitude. Descending, he unrolled his sleeping bag near the stone hearth, where a neat stack of firewood waited. The logs felt dry enough. Kneeling, he coaxed a flame to life, the nascent fire crackling, spitting sparks, slowly unfurling a welcome, if meager, heat that kissed his chilled face. A few days removed, silent, undistracted, that was the prescription. He craved the quiet, the solace of utter aloneness, finding crowds and commotion abrasive. Rest, perhaps some aimless wandering through the fog-bound woods, a clearing of the mind's clutter. He anticipated nothing beyond this simple, quiet withdrawal. The first day dissolved uneventfully. Elias drifted through the cabin's confines, inspecting window seals, arranging his meager provisions. Outside, the fog held its ground, an impassive gray wall. As dusk bled into the room, he lit candles he'd brought, preferring their flickering intimacy to the uncertain promise of the cabin's dusty lanterns. Later, cocooned in his sleeping bag, near the hearth's dying glow, the fire whispering its embers down to ash, he listened. Only the wind's low moan in the eaves and the occasional brittle snap of an unseen branch reached him. Exhaustion began its slow seduction, pulling his eyelids downward. Then, a whisper of movement overhead, a faint step. Elias's eyes snapped open. The loft floor lay directly above. Old timbers, shifting, settling in the cool night air, he reasoned. It came again, sharper this time, unmistakable, the deliberate pressure of a footfall on a complaining board. He went utterly still, his heart suddenly hammering, a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He stared upward into the oppressive shadows, straining his ears. Seconds stretched, taut as wire. Another step, a slow, drawn-out creak. He swallowed against a thickening throat. Wind, surely, or the house breathing, contracting. His eyes ached from the intensity of his gaze, but nothing more disturbed the silence. Eventually, sheer physical depletion dragged him under. He awoke to a stiff neck and the sight of his own breath pluming in the frigid air. The fire was dead ash. Pushing himself up, he scanned the main room. Everything remained precisely as he'd left it. No muddy prints marred the dust-furred floor. The door and windows stood secure. An unease, however, lingered like a chill in his bones, refusing to be shaken off. He pushed open the front door, seeking the bracing slap of morning air. The fog remained, dense and resolute, swallowing the tops of the pines, condensing in cold droplets on his jacket. The wind carried a raw edge that made his eyes water. He decided on a brief circuit of the cabin's exterior. The ground yielded softly beneath his boots, sucking slightly. He listened for birdsong, but heard only the sighing passage of wind through high, unseen branches. The wood felt paused, holding its breath around him. Back inside, the hiss of the gas stove burner was a small comfort as he brewed coffee. He sat at the table, nursing the bitter liquid from a chipped mug, the sounds from the night replaying themselves, unbidden. One part of his mind sought rational dismissal, another worried at the memory like a loose tooth. Coffee finished, he began tidying, a nervous energy propelling him, wiping dust from surfaces that would soon be dusty again, rechecking the windows, their frames damp but solid. Activity, he hoped, might quell the rising tide of anxiety. That afternoon, the cabin itself seemed to stir. Walls emitted soft, percussive pops, timber adjusting to the fluctuating temperature, he told himself. Floorboards creaked under his weight, expectedly, but other sounds surfaced, subtle, furtive, something like a quiet sigh from a shadowed corner, a brief exhalation near the stairwell's foot. He'd pause, mid-motion, straining to locate the source. The cabin felt possessed of its own respiration. His eyes darted, finding nothing. He forced his attention back to practicalities. The small battery radio he'd packed yielded only static. He ate cold rations from a tin, tried to plan a simple evening meal. Darkness fell early, hastened by the fog. Elias built up the fire once more, its flames painting the rough-hewn walls with leaping light. He positioned his candles strategically, talismans against the encroaching gloom. Settling near the hearth, he leafed through a brittle yellowed magazine unearthed from a drawer, its articles relics of a bygone era. Yet his attention strayed constantly, his senses on high alert, scanning the periphery, waiting. The wind probed the windows, the fire popped and fled. After time, cramped and restless, he stood, stretching muscles tight with tension. His eyes felt gritty. Bedtime, such as it was. He unrolled the sleeping bag again, leaving one candle burning on a low stool nearby. A small defiance against the dark. Safety be damned. His eyelids grew heavy, the familiar pull of sleep beginning, and then a distinct shift in the room's atmosphere. The candle flame beside him wavered violently. The walls seemed to groan, and from somewhere above, a low, guttural moan resonated through the floorboards. His heart leaped. He sat bolt upright, scanning the dimness. The candle on the stool sputtered, hissed, and died. Darkness rushed in, thick and absolute, save for the faint, pulsing embers in the hearth. A profound chill traced its way across his skin. Wind rattled the window panes, a frantic percussion, yet beneath it, he sensed something else, something contained, within. His pulse became a frantic drum against his eardrums. Slowly, agonizingly, he rose, one hand braced on the floor. His breath came in ragged gasps, his mouth papery dry. A scraping sound tore through the silence, emanating from the loft. The unmistakable drag of furniture, perhaps a chair leg, across bare wood. Elias found himself at the base of the stairs, peering up into impenetrable blackness. He stood frozen, listening. A faint shuffling whispered across the floorboards above. Slow, measured, deliberate. Vertigo threatened, but he forced words out, a hoarse greeting meant to dispel the terror, hoping desperately for the mundane. Silence answered, vast and watchful. His throat constricted, his legs felt watery. He retreated, stumbling back to the relative safety of his sleeping bag, pulling it around him like inadequate armor, his gaze fixed on the dark maw of the stairwell until exhaustion claimed him once more. Morning again brought the same biting cold, the same bruised quality to the light filtering through the dusty panes. His back screamed from the hard floor. He scrambled up, rubbing warmth back into his arms. A glance at the stairs revealed nothing amiss. The candle on the stool was a slumped monument of hardened wax. He poked listlessly at the fireplace ashes, his mind replaying the scrape, the shuffle. Not imagination, not the house settling. Footsteps. He endured the day shrouded in a deepening dread. He forced down bread and more tinned food, his stomach churning. He compelled himself outside, into the perpetual fog, walking until the cabin's silhouette dissolved behind him. Trees loomed, their trunks slick and dark, crowding close. The silence out here was immense, broken only by the wind's sigh, and once the distant crack of a falling limb. Panic tightened its grip when he realized he'd lost his bearings, sending him scrambling back toward the unseen structure. Sighting it again brought a perverse sense of relief, quickly soured by the unease it radiated. Late afternoon saw the temperature plummet. Shivering even indoors, Elias built a larger fire, feeding it logs with unsteady hands. While it caught, he prowled the cabin, a restless investigator, checking every corner, peering under furniture, opening cupboards already known to be empty. He climbed to the loft again, drawn back to the stubbornly sealed door. He put his shoulder into it, straining, grunting with effort. It held fast, solid, as if braced from the other side. His palm felt slick against the cool metal of the knob. He let go, breathing heavily, trying not to speculate about what lay beyond. That evening, he lit every candle he had left, placing them around the room, on the table, at the stairbase, near his bedding, small constellations against the encroaching dark. He sat before the fire, its flickering light a hypnotic dance, his thoughts a frantic whirl. An animal trapped upstairs? A hidden intruder? Or was his own mind fracturing under the weight of solitude and fear? He fought sleep, determined to remain vigilant. Around midnight, the candle flames began to tremble in unison, though no draft stirred the air. The atmosphere grew heavy, charged, then, faint but distinct, a sibilant breath close to the walls, whispering his name. Elias, repeated, his muscles seized. He scanned the room wildly. The cabin felt hermetically sealed, yet the whisper seemed to brush past his very ear. He lurched to his feet, legs nearly buckling, his heart hammered. He shouted something, a challenge, a plea, he couldn't recall, into the oppressive space. Instantly, the candle on the table winked out. The one by the stairs guttered, then died. The fine hairs on his arms prickled erect. He snatched up the last candle near his sleeping bag, shielding its fragile flame with a shaking hand. A floorboard creaked directly behind him. His stomach plummeted. He spun around, candle held aloft, illuminating nothing but deeper darkness. But the feeling of a presence was undeniable, a palpable shift in the space, something moving across the floor. His mouth was dust. He backed away instinctively until his shoulders met the cold wood of the wall. His mind screamed, "Run! Get out!" But his body was leaden, unresponsive. He stood pinned there, trembling. The final candle flame flickered, dipped, and was snuffed out. Utter blackness descended, profound and suffocating. His own breathing roared in his ears, impossibly loud against the frantic thudding in his chest. The room seemed alive now, filled with infinitesimal clicks, sighs, creaks, and beneath it all, faint, rhythmic breathing that wasn't his own. He reached out blindly, fingers brushing the back of the wobbling armchair. He gripped it, a flimsy anchor in the void. A moment passed, an eternity. Then, fumbling in his pocket, his fingers closed around the familiar shape of his lighter. He flicked it, once, twice, a spark. Then a tiny, hesitant flame bloomed, pushing back the darkness by mere inches. Stumbling towards the hearth, he managed to touch the flame to a piece of dry kindling laid amongst the embers. It caught, sputtered, then held. He knelt there, lighter still clutched tight, his entire frame rigid with tension, listening. The fire crackled, gathering strength, casting a growing circle of unsteady light. He waited, straining to hear, to see. A minute crawled by, then another. The sense of being watched remained, intense, almost physical, but nothing revealed itself. Sweat beaded on his forehead, incongruous in the chill air. Gradually, the oppressive weight in the room seemed to lessen slightly. The fire's soft glow illuminated the immediate area. His knees shaking, Elias pushed himself upright. He scanned the stairs. Empty. The front door still closed. He wiped his brow with a trembling hand, forcing himself to regulate his breathing. Retrieving his flashlight from beside the sleeping bag, he thumbed it on. The beam sliced through the gloom. He swept it across the floor, the walls. Nothing. No footprints. No disturbance. Only the dust, the shadows, and the lingering chill of fear that set his teeth chattering. Sleep was impossible. He spent the remainder of the night huddled with his back to the hearth, flashlight clutched in one hand, lighter in the other, feeding the fire whenever it threatened to die. His nerves were frayed wires. Every gust of wind, every settling groan of the cabin made him jump. The whispering returned intermittently, indistinct murmurs, fragments of his name seeming to echo from within the walls, from the darkness overhead. His scalp tingled with each recurrence. He focused on the fire's heat, the scent of wood smoke, desperate anchors to reality. When the gray smear of dawn finally seeped through the windows, diluting the darkness, a weak, exhausted relief washed over him. He forced himself to eat, though his stomach rebelled, his shaking hands barely able to hold his mug steady. A decision had crystallized in the long, terrifying hours. He had sought peace here, not this insidious, nerve-shredding torment. He packed swiftly, mechanically folding the sleeping bag, gathering the candle stubs, clearing away his few belongings. The cabin seemed to watch his preparations, a silent, brooding observer. The skin on his neck prickled. He fought the constant urge to look over his shoulder. To stay longer felt like courting madness. The feeling of unseen movement, of something lurking just beyond sight, never fully dissipated. Outside, the cold, wet air embraced him. The fog remained, a dense curtain clinging to the hillside. After loading the car, he paused, turning for a final look. The cabin's dark timber seemed to bleed into the mist, its form indistinct, almost spectral. He slid into the driver's seat, turned the key. The engine caught, shattering the silence. A surge of adrenaline, sharp as panic, tightened his chest. He reversed, gravel crunching, pointing the car down the treacherous slope. He drove with fierce concentration, eyes fixed on the barely visible track. Wind buffeted the car, sending swirls of fog racing across the path like fleeting apparitions. A single glance in the rearview mirror revealed only the receding wall of white where the cabin had stood. His mouth was parched, his knuckles bone white on the steering wheel. He pressed onward, needing distance, needing escape. The voices were gone now, but the frantic beat of his heart persisted. An unsettling conviction lingered. The cabin's presence wasn't confined to its walls. It trailed him just beyond the next shrouded bend. Only when he reached the lower elevations, where the fog thinned and patches of pale sky emerged, did the tension begin to recede. His muscles unlocked, shoulders slumping, his breathing steadied. He realized he'd barely blinked for miles. Slow, deep breaths. Focus on the road ahead. By the time he merged onto the main highway, sensation had returned to his numb fingers. A profound weariness settled over him, an ache deep in his bones, his eyes burning from sleeplessness and strain. He swore he would never go back. Not for solitude, not for anything. No more footsteps in the empty loft. No more whispered invitations from the walls. No more sensing that unseen watcher pacing just beyond the firelight. The quiet retreat he'd envisioned had twisted into something else entirely, a confrontation with a dread deeper than any he'd known. Even now, safe in the mundane light of day, the memory remains vivid. The dark corners, the creak of unseen weight on the boards above, the chilling certainty of being observed in the suffocating dark. The cabin had released him physically, yes, but a sliver of its oppressive presence remained lodged in his mind, watchful, perhaps waiting. He had no intention of ever answering its silent call. A cacophony of childish shrieks echoed through the sun-drenched air, a sound usually synonymous with joy, yet today it struck a dissonant chord against the sudden ice tracing my vertebrae. He stood apart, a solitary sentinel armed with a long-lens camera. His focus wasn't the whirling carousel ponies, nor the vendors hawking spun sugar confections. It was fixed, unnervingly, upon the playground teeming with small figures. In that splintered second, ignorance was a luxury I couldn't afford. Some primal wire tripped within me, signaling an intervention that would spiral into a years-long shadow play in my mind. It was Independence Day, the town common pulsing with a vibrant, almost frantic energy. Families sprawled across checkered blankets, the tang of charred meat weaving through the cloying sweetness of fried dough. I was there, ostensibly off-duty from the draining world of child protective services, sharing a rare pause with my sister, Chloe, and her lively offspring. A day sculpted for ease, for celebration, yet the ghosts of my profession lingered, sharpening my gaze against the backdrop of manufactured merriment, tuning my instincts to the frequency of threat. Initially, I fought the rising tide of suspicion. Perhaps he was merely a father, cataloging fleeting moments of his own child's youth. But the way he drifted, a silent predator circling the periphery of laughing clusters, always solitary, always detached, solidified the knot of dread in my stomach. The instrument he wielded was no casual holiday accessory. Its heft and precision spoke of serious intent, far beyond capturing blurry vacation snapshots. I leaned towards Chloe, my voice a low murmur against the park's cheerful din. "Chloe, see that man, near the oak tree, with the camera?" Her gaze followed mine, her brow knitting into familiar lines of concern. "Yes? What is it, Ilara?" "I don't know," I admitted, the words tasting inadequate. "Something feels predatory. He's been photographing the children for nearly an hour, but he's utterly alone." Chloe's eyes widened, reflecting my own unspoken fear. "You don't think he's—" A grim nod was my only answer. "I need to talk to him. Keep the kids close." She clutched my forearm, her grip tight. "Ilara, be careful. What if he's unhinged?" I attempted a smile, a flimsy shield. "My work throws all sorts at me. Remember, I'll manage. But maybe, keep your phone handy." Approaching him, I consciously softened my posture, projecting an air of innocuous curiosity. He was nondescript, middle-aged, clad in the uniform of suburban anonymity, khaki trousers, a plain polo shirt. He could have been anyone. "Incredible light for photos today, isn't it?" I offered, positioning myself beside him. He flinched, almost imperceptibly, lowering the camera. "Oh, yes, it is. Capturing some wonderful memories of your little ones, I bet." I watched his face, searching for the cracks in the veneer. A fleeting shadow, panic, resentment, crossed his features before being plastered over with a practiced smile. "No children myself. Freelance work. Just documenting the holiday spirit, you understand." Every internal alarm was now screaming. "Oh, which publications hire you?" The pause before his answer was just slightly too long, too calculated. "Various local outlets. You likely wouldn't recognize the names." The time for subtlety had passed. Speaking as a parent, I lied smoothly. "I have to say, a stranger taking photos of children without asking their guardians first. It's unsettling. Perhaps the decorations or the food stalls would be more appropriate subjects." His transformation was instantaneous. The flimsy affability dissolved, revealing something glacial and sharp beneath. "Look, lady," he spat, his voice dropping to a gravelly menace. "I don't need your opinion. This is public property. I can photograph whatever I damn well please." My pulse hammered against my ribs, but I held my ground. "Actually, no. Not minors. Not without consent. I need you to leave now, or the next call I make is to the police." For a taut moment, I thought compliance might follow. Then his hand shot out, fingers clamping around my wrist like iron bands. "You're not calling anyone," he snarled. The word dissolved into a frantic kaleidoscope of adrenaline and instinct. Twisting sharply, leveraging a technique drilled into me during self-defense training, I broke his hold. He lunged, the heavy camera arcing through the air like a pendulum of violence. I dropped low, feeling the displaced air whisper past my ear. Shouts erupted around us. The festive bubble had burst. Children screamed. Through the chaos, I saw Chloe, phone pressed to her ear, her face a mask of terror. He must have sensed the closing net of public attention. He spun, making a break for it, but the certainty of his vile purpose surged through me, eclipsing fear. I launched myself forward, tackling him low, the impact sending us sprawling onto the trampled grass. We wrestled in the dirt, his desperate attempts to escape met by my fierce resolve, fueled by the faces of countless children I tried to shield from monsters just like him. He was stronger, raw physicality against my righteous fury, but I clung on. Then, the piercing, beautiful wail of sirens cut through the pandemonium. His struggles intensified. A brutal blow connected with my ribs, stealing my breath, but his escape was thwarted. Firm hands hauled him off me. Through swimming vision, I saw uniformed officers forcing his arms behind his back, the metallic click of handcuffs echoing oddly in the sudden lull. My gaze fell upon his camera, discarded in the melee. Its screen, though fractured, glowed faintly. What flickered there sent a wave of profound nausea through me, chilling my blood far colder than the initial fear. Not just park scenes, other images, unspeakable tableaus, children stripped of innocence, posed in ways that desecrated childhood itself. Bile rose in my throat. I wrenched my eyes away. The ensuing hours became a disorienting montage of official reports. Paramedics check in my bruised ribs. The man, they confirmed, had warrants across 3 states. A known predator trafficking in the stolen innocence of children. My gut feeling, that unwelcome intuition, had been horrifyingly accurate. My intervention, born of unease, had potentially saved unknown others from his lens. Yet, as the adrenaline ebbed, leaving behind the stark reality, a violent tremor took hold of my body. Chloe enveloped me in a fierce hug, her own tears tracing paths through the grime on her cheeks. "He could have killed you," she choked out. "But he didn't," I managed, my voice steadier than the quaking inside. "And he didn't hurt anyone else here today." In the aftermath, I wore the ill-fitting mantle of hero. News crews materialized. Grateful park parents offered tearful thanks. But the accolades felt hollow against the persistent darkness etched behind my eyelids. The memory of the struggle, the indelible horror of those digital images, the crushing weight of his past and potential future. Victims. I plunged back into my work with a ferocity bordering on obsession, channeling the trauma into advocacy, demanding stricter laws, better tools for those hunting the hunters. Yet, sleep offered no refuge, populated instead by recurring nightmares, the grappling in the grass, the camera's sickening glow, the ghosts of children I couldn't reach. Time, aided by therapy's slow excavation, eventually carved out a space to coexist with the memory. The darkness couldn't be unseen. The knowledge of such depravity couldn't be unknown, but it could be repurposed, forged into fuel. Years later, the 4th of July still draws me back to that same park. I watch the children tumble and race, their laughter a bittersweet melody underscored by my own hypervigilance. The urge to scan the crowds, to assess lone figures, remains, a deeply ingrained reflex. But fear has slowly transmuted into resolve. For every shadow that lurks, I remind myself, there are those like me, unwilling bystanders no more, ready to step into the breach. That man, that anonymous face of evil, imparted a brutal education in the world's hidden fractures, but he also illuminated the vital necessity of trusting that inner alarm, of finding courage even when paralyzed by fear. One person, one moment, one act can ripple outwards. As fireworks detonate above, splashing the night canvas with fleeting streaks of crimson, white, and sapphire, I silently reaffirm my vow to be that person, to find that courage, because true liberty isn't just about celebrating nationhood. It's about the fierce, unwavering protection of its most vulnerable souls. The 4th of July is forever altered for me now, a day stained by terror, yet also illuminated by the unexpected resilience I discovered within, a testament to the quiet heroism ordinary people can summon when the world desperately needs it. A ripple of laughter, thin and brittle as ice, fractured the corridor's deep quiet, raising the fine hairs along my arms. Not the sound of some patient finding a fleeting moment of joy, nothing remotely human or warm. This was alien, a resonance utterly misplaced in the vaulted stillness of Crestfall Asylum at 2 a.m. I am Nurse Alara. For 5 years, the nocturnal pulse of this place has been my metronome, its cycles of mania and melancholic calm my familiar landscape. I believed myself seasoned, inoculated against the spectrum of human fragility, the sudden furies, the intricate architectures of delusion. Until that night, I was naive. The shift began under a typical shroud of quietude, rounds completed, medications dispensed, the great old building groaning softly around the muffled breaths of the sleeping. Then, stationed under the stark fluorescence of the nursing hub, immersed in the day's accumulated paperwork, I registered it, a faint effervescence of mirth, barely threading through the electrical hum. My head lifted, brow furrowed. The sound originated from down the west wing, near room 237. Peculiar. Mr. Abernathy, the occupant, swam deep in prescribed oblivion, chemically tethered to his mattress. Awake? Laughing? Impossible. I rose, my soft-soled shoes whispering against the linoleum, each step amplifying in the hollow expanse. As I neared 237, the laughter swelled, shedding its initial coyness, blossoming into something wild, unhinged. My fingers hovered over the cool metal of the doorknob, a profound sense of trespass prickling my skin. With a captured breath, I pressed inward. Darkness greeted me, thick and cloying, pierced only by the weak constellations of monitoring equipment. Mr. Abernathy lay inert, a still life conforming precisely to expectation, and the laughter vanished. Silence rushed back in. I checked his vitals, steady, rhythmic, normal. Yet, turning to retreat, a flicker danced at the edge of my vision, a swift pivot, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Nothing, only the familiar geography of shadows and sterile apparatus. Steady, Alara, I chided internally, the words feeling thin. Imagination, starved by the quiet, is feasting. Returning to my station, I tried to anchor myself in the mundane ritual of charting, but an amorphous disquiet had taken root. The very atmosphere of the asylum felt altered, charged with an unseen static. That's when it returned. Laughter again. But this time, from the opposite corridor, spilling from the direction of the day room, a communal space invariably locked and deserted after hours. Against the insistent clamor of my own better judgment, I moved to investigate. The sound intensified with my approach, multiplying, fracturing into a chorus, a phantom gala in full swing. My keys trembled against the lock, my fingers clumsy, slick with sudden perspiration. The cacophony ceased the instant the door swung inward. Utter emptiness. Chairs pyramided against one wall, the air still and undisturbed. No trace of revelers, no physical explanation for the phantom merriment. but the space felt recently vacated. A palpable energy lingered, the resonance of something just departed. I retreated, securing the lock, my pulse a frantic drumbeat in my ears. What unseen current was flowing through these halls tonight? A full sweep of the ward became necessary. Room by room, I moved, checking on the slumbering forms. Initially, all seemed placid, the rhythmic sighs of sleep, the steady electronic pulse of monitors. Yet, with each subsequent door I opened, the feeling of fundamental wrongness deepened, coiled tighter in my gut. It was in room 252 that I saw it, or thought I did. A fleeting impression as I turned to leave. A patch of darkness, impossibly deeper than the ambient gloom, detaching itself from the wall, flowing with the viscosity of smoke or ink spilled underwater. I blinked, scrubbing at my eyes, and it resolved back into simple shadow. Gone. My rational mind scrambled for purchase. Fatigue, a trick of the low light, but a colder, more ancient part of me knew. Back at the nursing station, the sight of my colleague, Reese, arriving for his medication rounds was a sudden, desperate relief. "Reese," I began, striving for a neutrality my voice betrayed. "Anything unusual strike you tonight?" He gave me a sidelong, assessing glance. "Unusual how, Ilara?" I faltered, the fear of sounding unhinged, warring with the need to share the burden. Just sounds, things seeming out of place, shadows. His expression shifted minutely, a tremor of something, recognition, fear, flickered in his eyes before his professional mask solidified. Old place like this, bound to creak and groan, but his gaze wouldn't quite meet mine. He was withholding. "Reese, what aren't you saying?" He sighed, a heavy sound, and cast a furtive look down the empty corridor. "Look, I didn't want to sound like I was losing it, but since you're asking, yeah, been noticing things, hearing whispers. Last few weeks, it's felt heavier. A column of ice formed along my spine. What kind of things? Shadows that don't belong to anything. Voices like static just under the silence. And the patience." He stopped, discomfort etched onto his face. "What about the patients?" I urged. "They're seeing things too, even the ones usually grounded, talking about something in the hospital, something that walks around after dark." Before the weight of his words could fully land, a scream tore through the pre-dawn quiet, high, thin, vibrating with absolute terror. We both jolted, then broke into a run towards the source, room 224. Clara, diagnosed schizophrenic, but typically placid under her medication regimen. We burst through her door to find her compressed into the far corner, eyes vast pools of reflected fear. "They're here," she shrieked, voice cracking. "Right here. Don't you see them?" Cautiously, I moved towards her. "Clara, it's all right. You're safe now. There's nothing." Even as the reassurance left my lips, movement snagged my peripheral vision. The shadows in the room weren't static. They seemed to writhe, condensing, pulling together into forms almost humanoid, yet fundamentally other. Clara's trembling finger stabbed the air past my shoulder. "Behind you!" I spun, my breath catching in my throat. For one crystalline, heart-stopping second, I saw it. An upright emptiness carved from the dim light, a silhouette absorbing all illumination, faceless save for the void it presented, its edges indistinct, wavering like heat haze. Then it dissolved, bleeding back into the ambient gloom. Reese stood frozen beside me, his face bleached, eyes wide with shared shock. "God Almighty, what was that?" he breathed. No answer came. Instead, the overhead lights began to stutter, flickering erratically. The temperature plunged, our exhalations pluming visibly in the suddenly glacial air. Clara's whimpers were swallowed by a sibilant tide rising from the very walls, 1,000 wordless secrets breathed at once. The shadows stirred again, no longer retreating, but advancing, spreading across floor and ceiling like spilled ink, extending tendrils of pure night. I felt a touch on my arm, cold, impossibly cold, and undeniably substantial. "Run!" The word tore from my throat. I seized Clara's arm, grabbing Reese with my other hand. We fled the room, the whispers escalating behind us into a frantic, rustling crescendo. Chaos erupted on the ward. Alarms shrieked. Other patients screamed. The darkness pursued, flowing down the corridors, a relentless, silent flood. We lunged for the main exit, hammering on the doors, but they held fast, sealed. "Basement!" Reese gasped. "Emergency exit!" We plunged down the stairwell, the encroaching dark licking at our heels. Other frantic footfalls joined ours. Staff, a few disoriented patients swept up in the panicked exodus. The basement was a lightless pit, but Reese, fumbling in the oppressive black, found the exit bar. He slammed against it. A moment of agonizing resistance, then it yielded with a crash, spilling us out into the blessedly cool, indifferent night. We didn't stop running until the asphalt of the parking lot was solid beneath our feet. Glancing back, I saw the asylum's windows filled with writhing, amorphous shapes, as if the building itself were being devoured from within by its own shadows. Standing there, gulping air, the realization settled cold and heavy. Nothing would be mundane again. We had witnessed a violation of the known world, a truth that cracked the foundations of reality. The authorities, summoned by alarms and our incoherent calls, swarmed the grounds. They evacuated the building, searched it thoroughly, found nothing, no shadows, no inexplicable phenomena. The official narrative settled on a convenient fiction, mass hysteria triggered by a localized gas leak. But I know what I saw, what Reese saw, what Clara screamed about. Something dormant, ancient, and deeply malignant had stirred within the walls of Crestfall Asylum. Whether it had always resided there, feeding parasitically on the ambient fear and fractured minds, or whether some recent disturbance had called it forth, remains an unanswerable question. I tendered my resignation the following morning. The thought of re-entering that structure was intolerable. Many others followed suit. Crestfall closed its doors not long after, crippled by scandal, haunted by rumor, unable to find staff willing to brave its deepening shadows. Sometimes, driving past the derelict shell late at night, I imagine I hear it, a faint, desiccated echo of laughter drifting from the black, vacant windows, and I wonder, with the chill that never truly leaves, if it's truly empty now, or if we merely abandoned those left behind to contend with the darkness alone. Answers elude me, but one certainty remains. I will never perceive shadows as mere absences of light again, for I know now that sometimes the things lurking in the periphery, dismissed as tired eyes or overactive minds, possess a terrifying reality. They wait, patient and hungry, in the forgotten corners, in the deep folds of the night, poised to emerge when our vigilance wanes, and the darkness within mirrors the darkness without. Never had I conceived that an inert plane of silvered glass could usurp my peace, yet the looking-glass acquired from the dust-laden antique emporium proved unnervingly singular. Its frame, a ponderous gilded affair, writhed with baroque curlicues at its perimeter. Deceptively heavy, it felt dense, with secrets the proprietor, a man whose gaze skidded away from mine, refused to divulge. He merely swaddled it in brown paper, accepted my currency with averted eyes, and let me depart. A shrug was my only reply then, believing I'd unearthed a striking ornament for my parlor. Oh, had I but pivoted and abandoned that gilded trap. The artifact crossed my threshold near the zenith of the day. Sunlight streamed through the hallway, and I recalled the glass capturing it oddly, refracting light with a queer, almost oily quality. It possessed an unexpected warmth beneath my fingertips. Propping it against the wall adjacent to the entrance, a provisional placement before committing to hooks, I stepped back. A glance at my reflected self yielded the first ripple in reality's fabric. My countenance, my attire, mirrored faithfully, save for an anomalous dark smudge blooming on the shoulder of my shirt within the glass. A downward look confirmed the pristine state of the actual fabric. A pause, a flicker of bafflement. Returning my gaze to the mirror, the blemish had vanished. The reflection was now immaculate. Dismissing it as a trick of light or a fleck of grime upon the surface, I fetched cleanser from the kitchen and polished the glass until it gleamed, vacant and clear. Throughout that afternoon, my path frequently intersected with the mirror's silent gaze. Each casual pass elicited a subtle, almost subliminal stutter at the periphery of my vision, as if my mirrored double lagged, a mere heartbeat behind my corporeal form. A frown creased my brow, swiftly smoothed by the rationalization of fatigue born from long hours at my desk. I resolved to relocate the piece to the parlor, envisioning it suspended above the console table by the window. Hanging it demanded exertion. Armed with a spirit level and a sturdy nail hammered deep into the plaster, I carefully maneuvered the weighty frame into position. Stepping back to appraise my handiwork, I surveyed the room from its center, verifying the alignment through the mirror's perspective. The reflection rendered the space behind me accurately, the settee precisely placed, the draperies swept aside, the standing lamp occupying its designated corner. But then, my eye snagged on a detail, a door reflected behind me, the portal to my subterranean storage warren. In the tangible world, that door stood firmly shut. Within the mirror's realm, however, it hung slightly ajar, a mere fissure yawning into palpable darkness. I spun around, heart quickening. The physical door remained closed, sealed tight. A glance back at the mirror confirmed its sudden alignment with reality. The reflected door was now shut as well. A tremor of disquiet coursed through me, my arms prickling. Surely, I reasoned, it was merely an optical illusion, a distortion caused by the angle of the door handle's reflection. I forcibly quelled the rising unease. Sleep proved elusive that night. The house, usually a repository of familiar sighs and groans, seemed to whisper with unfamiliar susurrations, soft creaks that defied identification. Around the witching hour, thirst propelled me toward the kitchen. Yet, an invisible tether drew me instead to the parlor. I activated the lamp, its low wattage casting long, dancing shadows. The mirror hung there, capturing my silhouette against the ambient gloom. Compelled, I drew nearer, leaning in until my reflected visage filled the frame. My eyes, bloodshot from wakefulness, stared back. No phantom smudges, no flickering delays. A wave of self-reproach washed over me. My nerves were frayed, clearly. Just as I began to pivot away, a sound emanated from the mirror. A delicate tapping, faint, rhythmic, like fingernails gently rapping on glass. My pulse surged. I recoiled, anticipating a fissure spiderwebbing across the surface, or perhaps an insect trapped behind the silvering. The glass remained unblemished. Tentatively, I touched the ornate frame, tracing the gilded swirls, my own frantic heartbeat drumming against my fingertips. Silence reclaimed the room. After several taut moments suspended in heavy breaths, I retreated to my bedroom, though slumber remained a distant shore. The following day found me navigating my office duties under a pall of exhaustion. My work, a meticulous dance of documents and data entry, suffered. My focus fractured, my gaze repeatedly straying to the clock, anticipating the return home with a knot of dread. I confided in Ben, a colleague, recounting the mirror's strange behavior. He chuckled, attributing it to the charming imperfections inherent in antiques, jesting about haunted houses. I manufactured a thin laugh, but the tension coiled tighter within my chest. It was the mutable nature of the reflection, the ephemeral stain, the errant door that gnawed at me. I wrestled my attention back to spreadsheets and reports, pushing the unsettling images aside. Upon returning home that evening, I hesitated at the parlor's threshold, observing the mirror from a safe distance. It reflected the entirety of the room, encompassing the hallway and the basement door beyond. All appeared placidly correct. The door, shut. The furniture, static. The curtains, open, mirroring their actual state. A fragile sense of relief bloomed. I prepared a solitary meal, consumed it before the flickering television screen, and then sought the cleansing ritual of a hot shower. Emerging refreshed, I padded back into the parlor to extinguish the lamp. I froze. The mirror offered a scene utterly incongruous with the present moment. It depicted Mish, moving about the kitchen, seemingly engaged in culinary tasks, stirring a pot on the stove, glancing towards the cupboards. Yet, I stood here, before the mirror, clad in my post-shower attire. My own figure was dimly visible. Within, the reflection's background, static by the lamp, while my mirrored doppelganger enacted its phantom culinary ballet. The illusion shattered as abruptly as it had materialized, snapping back to a conventional reflection of my paralyzed form. I stumbled backward, colliding softly with the settee, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. my throat constricted, words failing me. My gaze remained locked on the impassive glass, anticipating another aberrant shift. Perspiration beaded on my forehead. After an eternity stretched taut, I fumbled for my phone, the impulse to summon Ben, to demand he witness this madness, warring with the certainty of his derision. I lowered the phone, compelled instead to approach the mirror once more. Hesitantly, I pressed my palm flat against the glass. It felt cool, solid, utterly mundane. My faint handprint aligned perfectly with my flesh and blood hand. Nothing overtly strange transpired. Releasing a ragged sigh, I switched off the lamp and fled to the perceived sanctuary of my bedroom, leaving the mirror to its silent vigil in the darkened parlor. Sleep, oblivion, that was all I craved. Night fractured again, this time pierced by a soft, rhythmic thudding, faint but insistent, like deliberate footfalls ascending a staircase. It took several disoriented seconds to pinpoint the source. The parlor. My heart resumed its frantic cadence. My mouth turned to dust. Slipping from bed, I illuminated the hallway, pausing just outside my bedroom door, straining to listen. The thudding persisted. Slowly, cautiously, I advanced toward the parlor, goose flesh prickling my skin. Reaching the doorway, I beheld the basement door gaping wide. I never left that door open. Its recalcitrant hinges demanded a firm tug to operate. Now, it yawned into the Stygian blackness of the stairwell, leading down to the storage depths. My gaze instinctively flew to the mirror. The reflection presented a chilling tableau. It showed me Elias standing rooted to the spot, but my mirrored self was oriented differently, turned, facing the reflected basement door. As I watched, horrified, the mirror Elias stepped across the threshold in the reflection, descending into the mirrored basement, while the real Elias remained frozen in the parlor, paralyzed by a primal fear. Nausea churned within me. An icy tendril snaked up my spine. The urge to slam the basement door shut warred with a paralyzing terror of approaching the mirror. This is absurd. It's just glass, my rational mind insisted, yet every sinew screamed caution. Forcing leaden feet forward, I edged closer, tracking my reflection peripherally. It now seemed synchronized, mimicking my tentative advance. Reaching the actual basement door, I grasped the knob and pulled it shut with the decisive click of the latch. My reflection mirrored the action precisely. Wiping clammy sweat from my brow with a trembling hand, I felt a marginal easing of tension, yet the conviction lingered. Something now resided behind that closed door, listening, waiting. I risked another glance at the mirror. It showed me standing before the sealed basement portal, accurate for a fleeting instant. Then, movement flickered in the reflection's background. A nebulous shape slid across the reflected hallway floor. No corresponding sound reached my ears in the tangible world. I whirled around. The hallway stretched empty and silent. Turning back to the mirror, the shape within the glass had vanished. A fresh wave of terror washed over me, cold and visceral. My breath came in ragged gasps, my pulse hammering in my ears. I scrambled back to my bedroom, locking the door securely behind me. Perched on the edge of my mattress, I fought to regulate my breathing, my fingers quivering uncontrollably. I strained my ears, listening for any further disturbance. Only the profound silence of the house answered. Hours crawled by, as I sat vigilant, eyes fixed on the bedroom door, anticipating something. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me, pulling me down onto the bed, but true rest remained unattainable. Dawn arrived, bringing with it a steely resolve. The mirror had to go. I dressed quickly, marching into the parlor with the firm intention of wresting the object from the wall and banishing it to the garage. Yet, confronting it directly, my courage evaporated. My hand hovered near the gilded frame, arrested by an almost palpable coldness radiating from the glass. My stomach clenched. Sweat erupted anew on my forehead. Defeated, I retreated, frustrated by my own timidity. Seeking refuge in the kitchen, I brewed coffee, my gaze unwillingly drawn to the parlor entrance, a tightness constricting my chest. An hour later, fortified by caffeine and desperation, I located the antique shop's number. If they knew anything at all about this mirror's provenance. The line rang, unanswered. I tried again. Silence. A profound sense of helplessness washed over me. Pacing the confines of my kitchen, I cast furtive glances toward the parlor. Each glimpse felt like a gamble, fearing what warped reality the glass might reveal, yet simultaneously sensing its presence, a patient, malevolent awareness. Gritting my teeth, I forced myself to approach it one final time. I studied my reflection. Elias, pale, clad in work attire, eyes shadowed with fatigue. Reaching out with both hands, I grasped the frame. The surface felt unnaturally cool beneath my palms. The tension in my own reflected arms was starkly visible. My head throbbed, a dull ache born of sleeplessness. I pulled, attempting to lift the mirror from its hook. It refused to yield, feeling impossibly heavier than before, anchored as if by unseen forces. Straining, muscles protesting, I achieved nothing. The frame remained stubbornly affixed. Retrieving a screwdriver from a kitchen drawer, I reasoned I could perhaps pry it from the wall entirely. The instant the metal tip slid behind the frame, a harsh, grating screech erupted from the mirror itself. The sound, visceral and sharp, sent me stumbling back, the screwdriver clattering to the floor. My heart leapt into my throat. Snatching up the tool, I retreated again, trembling violently. Then the tapping resumed, that soft, insidious rapping upon the glass, steady and deliberate, as if someone resided on the other side, seeking ingress or attention. My eyes locked onto my reflection. Its lips were moving, forming silent words. It appeared to be speaking, perhaps calling out, yet no sound emerged. Only my own ragged breathing filled the room. Nausea surged, hot and acidic. I took another involuntary step back, but the reflection remained pressed close to the glass, its mouth shaping unheard syllables. A high-pitched ringing filled my ears. My breathing grew shallow, each inhale a struggle. My heart pounded against my ribs with painful intensity, the rhythm echoing in my temples. Escape. The imperative screamed through my mind. The front door lay behind me. I bolted towards it, grabbing my coat, fumbling with my shoes, my gaze darting compulsively back towards the mirror. The reflection now showed the hallway behind me, but crucially, the front door within the glass remained firmly shut, even as the real door stood wide open before me. This final, blatant mismatch sent icy tendrils down my spine. As I plunged through the open doorway into the crisp air outside, I caught one last, chilling glimpse of the mirror. My reflection depicted me walking away, but the mirrored Elias wore a faint, almost imperceptible smile, a look of quiet satisfaction. I slammed the door shut and stood on the porch, gulping the cool morning air, the frantic rhythm of my heart gradually slowing. Relief warred with lingering terror. Away from the mirror, outside the confines of the house, the world felt momentarily solid again. The decision crystallized. The mirror must be removed, exorcised. How, I didn't yet know, but its presence within my home was intolerable. My hands still shook. Sweat trickled down my back despite the chill. My mind raced, cycling through desperate options. A hammer's blunt force, consignment to an anonymous dumpster, seeking out someone versed in banishing cursed artifacts. The thought felt ludicrous, yet unavoidable. I stood there on the porch until the trembling subsided enough for me to reach my car. I drove aimlessly for a time, the familiar streets blurring past, seeking clarity that wouldn't come. Passing another antique shop, I considered stopping, seeking counsel, but the fear of ridicule held me back. I just drove, directionless, until the stark realization hit. Evasion was temporary. I haven't formulated a definitive strategy. I sit here still, just beyond my own front walk, capturing these events on my phone before the details blur, before fear erodes memory. From this vantage point, I can see the parlor window. The curtains hang partially drawn, concealing, yet revealing the knowledge that the mirror waits within, behind that plaster wall. Thoughts of hammers and heavy shrouds flicker through my mind, yet a deep-seated dread whispers that such mundane solutions will prove inadequate. Avoidance, however, is not sustainable. To leave it there is to invite further incursions, more reflections diverging from reality, until perhaps the reflection usurps reality entirely. I must re-enter. I must confront it. I cannot say what awaits me, only that the alternative, allowing that silent watching glass to consume my life, is unthinkable. My pulse quickens again, a familiar drumbeat of fear, but resolve hardens within me. I'm going back inside, now, before it finds a way to keep me trapped within its silver depths forever. That day remains etched, crystalline, in memory. The day the Victorian looking glasses came into my life. I was navigating the hushed chaos of an estate sale, a scavenger amidst the ghosts of furniture and forgotten bric-a-brac that crowded a dim upstairs room. My own little emporium, tucked away on a less traveled street, wasn't exactly flourishing, but a quiet clientele sustained my penchant for vintage reflectors and peculiar artifacts. And there they stood, a sentinel row of 5 towering mirrors against the far wall. Ornate wooden frames, darkly intricate, held glass filmed with age, faint blooms of tarnish creeping in from the edges. Heavy, yes, and undeniably worn, yet some magnetism pulled at me. Stored for generations in an attic's dusty embrace, the seller murmured. An impulse. Buy. Pure and simple. I saw potential beneath the grime. A polish, a careful restoration, a respectable profit. Loading them onto my battered pickup was an ordeal. I can still recall the low, resonant shudder each mirror made in the truck bed, despite the swaddling blankets, a discordant music accompanying the journey back. My muscles screamed protest as I wrestled them out, one by one, leaning their imposing weight against the back wall of my shop, a cramped space already dense with accumulated histories. A perfunctory wipe banished the worst of the dust, but the glass itself received little scrutiny. Haste governed my actions that day. Dawn filtered through the shop window the following morning, perhaps half an hour before I typically unbolt the door. I flicked on the overheads, their fluorescent hum filling the silence, and my gaze fell upon the mirrors. Instantly, something felt dissonant in the central pane's reflection. A ripple, perhaps, a flaw in the ancient silvering. Drawing closer, I peered intently. My likeness stared back, familiar yet not. My hair, habitually parted on the left, was mirrored with a precise part on the right. A quick, reflexive hand smoothed my actual hair, left part undeniably. A glance at the flanking mirrors showed faithful images. A shrug. Warped glass, surely. An old mirror's trickery. Later, the bell above the door chimed, announcing a browser. He inquired about the quintet. Not yet ready, I explained, gesturing towards the frames needing refinishing, the glass demanding polish. Even as I spoke, my peripheral vision snagged on that central mirror. My reflection seemed to lag, a subtle desynchronization, like watching a poorly dubbed film where the movements trail the sound. A tremor of unease feathered down my spine, but I held the customer's gaze, pushing the sensation away. He departed, and I turned determinedly back to pricing Edwardian lockets, willing the mirrors into simple objects once more. Days bled into a week. I rearranged the shop, giving the mirrors prominence along the western wall, angling them just so. Patrons admired the Baroque carvings, the sheer presence of them, yet none offered to buy. In quiet moments, I found myself drawn, standing before them, scrutinizing. Sometimes the second from the left lent me an inch or two of height I didn't possess. Sometimes the first shaved pounds from my frame. Often, frustratingly, they presented nothing unusual at all. Curiosity, however, began to sharpen into something more insistent. Notepad in hand, I decided on a methodical examination. Before the first mirror, me, Elias, in my customary jeans and chambray shirt, but the face looking back seemed etched with a deeper weariness, lines spidering from the eyes that my bathroom mirror never revealed. The second mirror smoothed those lines, paradoxically gifting me a touch of youth. The third, initially unremarkable, resolved into a version of myself with unnervingly perfect posture, an aura of confidence I couldn't claim. It was the fourth that held the strangest anomaly. My reflection wore my clothes, yes, but a faint spectral scratch marred the glass directly over my left shoulder. No such imperfection existed on the physical surface. The fifth mirror seemed the most benign, yet occasionally a flicker, a minute, peripheral movement that didn't correspond to my own stillness. Unease solidified, a cold knot in my gut, though I clung to logic. Aged glass, eccentric lighting, tired eyes. Swapping bulbs yielded no change. Whispers began among the regulars. Some found the reflections intriguing, atmospheric. Others used the word creepy, their eyes darting towards the mirrored wall. I couldn't blame them. Closing time became a ritual. Alone in the shop's quiet dimness, I'd stand before them, breath shallow, neck muscles tautening. First mirror, second, third. My reflected self morphed subtly with each step. None of the alterations felt random, yet none coalesced into a coherent narrative. A phantom limp in the second glass, though my legs were sound. a non-existent silver band glinting on the third reflection's finger. I owned no rings. One evening, immersed late in the tedium of inventory, the main lights subdued, I was tallying porcelain teacups when a movement snagged my attention. The mirrors. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs, breath caught in my throat. In the second mirror from the left, my reflection, distinctly not me, was slowly, deliberately raising its left hand. My own hands remained rigidly at my sides. A glacial chill mapped my spine. Pins and needles prickled my fingertips. The reflected hand lowered. Its head turned, gaze sliding away as if bored. A frantic scan of the shop revealed nothing else disturbed. Slow, deliberate breaths did little to ease the constriction in my chest. I forced myself forward, halting inches from the glass. My reflection stared back, perfectly synchronized now. I raised my arm. It matched. I tilted my head. It mirrored. My legs trembled, a betraying weakness, but I held my ground. After an eternity measured in heartbeats, I retreated. Checked the others. Normal. All terrifyingly normal. I locked up, fled home, and spent the night wrestling with sheets and the chilling impossibility of what I'd witnessed. Logic offered no sanctuary. The next day arrived under the tyranny of forced normalcy. It had to be imagination, fatigue playing tricks. I opened the shop, greeted customers, busied myself with dusting and pricing. Around midday, needing a pause, I found myself before the fourth mirror, the one with the phantom scratch. I watched, vigilant. My reflection returned my gaze, identical, until my focus sharpened. The spectral scratch on the glass perfectly overlaid the faint crescent scar on my actual shoulder, a relic from a childhood encounter with a rusty nail, usually barely visible. Here, it was starkly delineated, highlighted, almost indicated. My pulse leapt. Reaching back beneath my shirt, my fingers traced the familiar faded ridge of skin. By the close of the second week, each mirror had unveiled its unique brand of dissonance. One reflection sported spectacles I didn't own. Another bore a small, intricate tattoo on the forearm. A third presented a face shadowed with stubble I hadn't grown. These apparitions flickered into view unpredictably, never simultaneously, always in isolation within their specific frame. A constant humming tension became my baseline. I paced when the shop was empty, flexing my shoulders, rubbing my palms together, trying to dissipate the coiled anxiety. I started leaving the lights burning all night, dreading the morning encounter with potential darkness. One evening, after locking the door, a desperate need for normalcy drove me to action. I unearthed old drop cloths, heavy canvas smelling of dust and turpentine. One by one, I shrouded the mirrors, obscuring the unsettling glass. A profound wave of relief washed over me as the final sheet fell into place. Hidden, silenced. I left, grabbed greasy takeout, and retreated to my apartment, seeking oblivion. That night, sleep came deeper, less fraught. Morning. Routine demanded I check the shop. I tugged the sheets away. The mirrors gleamed impassively under the fluorescent glare. But then, faint smears on the glass, visible only from an angle, like the ghostly imprint of fingers, but pressed from the inside. My stomach plummeted. How? They weren't distinct prints, more like greasy, translucent trails where fingertips might have dragged. Frantic rubbing with a soft cloth achieved nothing. The marks remained, embedded within the silvering itself. Enough. They had to go. Not out, not yet, but away. Into the cluttered storage room at the back. Grunting, straining against their surprising heft, I maneuvered them one by one into the cramped space, leaning them against the cold concrete wall. The room's single, flickering overhead bulb cast harsh shadows, making the frames seem more menacing, the glass deeper. My heart raced as I aligned them side by side, and then I saw it, all 5 reflections simultaneously. Me, yet fractured. Each pane showed a subtle variation despite my static posture. One reflection bore a livid bruise blooming on its cheek. Another seemed oddly vibrant, healthier. A third looked utterly depleted, shadows scooped beneath its eyes. A lump formed in my throat. My legs felt unsteady. I couldn't bear to look long. I fumbled with the tops again, throwing them over the glass, plunging the reflections back into darkness before retreating to the relative sanity of the shop front. The following week was a slow descent. I tried to bury myself in work, but the storage room door became a focal point of dread. Sometimes, in the quiet lulls, I thought I heard faint noises emanating from within, a soft, intermittent tapping, a dry brushing sound. Entering the room made my breath catch, my skin prickle. I took to leaving its light perpetually on as well. My appetite waned. Days were spent on edge, startled by the building's normal groans. Nights were haunted by fragmented dreams, staring into mirrors that refused to obey, seeing versions of myself aged, scarred, tattooed, each bearing an alien expression, watching me. It was a quiet afternoon, the shop empty, the street outside drowsing in the sun. Inventory needed checking in the back. Steeling myself, I pushed open the storage room door and stopped cold. The tops lay pooled on the concrete floor. All 5 mirrors stood exposed. My chest tightened. My mouth went instantly dry. I knew I had covered them. Hesitantly, I stepped inside. My reflections regarded me, each subtly out of sync with the others, a silent, discordant chorus. The first tilted its head, analytical. The second seemed to slump slightly. The third held a gaze of unnerving directness. The fourth and fifth remained mostly still, yet I felt their eyes tracking my every shift. Sweat beaded on my forehead. My throat closed. A primal urge screamed at me to find a hammer, to shatter the glass, consequences be damned. But they were valuable, rare, and deeper than that, a sliver of cold fear questioned what unleashing 5 dissonant reflections might truly entail. Words tore from my tight throat, shaky and thin. Why? A foolish question hurled at mirrored glass. Why are you doing this? Silence answered, thick and watchful. Then, the far left reflection tilted its head again, a slow, deliberate gesture. The middle one's arm twitched, lifting an inch before dropping. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs. I stood paralyzed, breathing raggedly. Action. I needed action. Stumbling to the far corner, I grabbed an old, heavy-duty top. With trembling hands, I flung it over the first mirror, averting my eyes from the glass. Then the second, the third. My fingers fumbled, clumsy with adrenaline. My foot caught the corner of the third mirror's frame. It wobbled precariously. A desperate lunge, arm straining, saved it from crashing. Panting, sweat stinging my eyes, I finally got them all covered. I backed out of the room, pulling the door shut behind me. That night, locking the shop felt insufficient. Double-checking the bolts brought no peace. The mirrors felt like an intrusion, not just in my space, but in my mind. Sleep offered no escape, only disjointed replays. Me, fractured across 5 panes, older, younger, marked, changed. Each iteration, watching, waiting. I woke repeatedly, heart pounding, skin clammy. Morning. Dread propelled me straight to the storage room. The tops remained firmly in place. A fragile tendril of relief unfurled. Perhaps I could sell them quickly, as is, to a collector who appreciated eccentricities, no questions asked. I stood there, planning my sales pitch, the weight still heavy in my chest, shoulders aching from tension and sleeplessness. That's when I heard it. A soft, dry scraping sound from behind the heavy canvas, like fingernails lightly drawn across glass. My gaze shot to the tops. Nothing else in the room could make that noise. My stomach clenched. I realized I was holding my breath again. Edging closer, the scraping ceased abruptly. Silence pressed in. How long I stood there, listening to the absence of sound, I don't know. An age. Finally, I retreated, locking the flimsy storage room door, though it offered little real security. I hung the closed sign on the front door, sat behind the counter in the empty shop, the silence amplifying the frantic thrum of my own pulse. My phone buzzed, ignored. The mirrors consumed all bandwidth. The rest of the day dissolved into aimless pacing, furtive glances at the storage room door, a constant battle against the urge to check the tops again. Every creak of the old building sent a jolt through my system. My body thrummed with unrelieved tension, a dull ache settling in my lower back, my knees stiffening with anxiety. Calling someone felt impossible. Who would believe this madness? As dusk began to purple the sky outside, clarity struck through the fog of fear. I couldn't live like this. The mirrors had to leave, truly leave. My rented storage unit across town, anonymous and secure. That was the answer. Get them away from my shop, away from me. Maybe distance would bring silence. Grabbing the heavy-duty dolly, I headed back to the storage room. The door groaned open, tops undisturbed, but the air felt thicker, charged. My hand shook as I maneuvered the first mirror onto the dolly, careful not to dislodge the covering. The frame felt unnaturally cold through the canvas, pressing hard against my palms. Gaze fixed on the floorboards, I wheeled it out, wrestled it into the truck bed, propped it against the side, back for the second, the third, fourth, fifth. Each trip amplified the prickling sensation on my arms, the churning nausea in my gut. Finally, all 5 stood upright in the bed, tailgate slammed shut, straps cinched tight. I locked the shop, the click of the deadbolt echoing hollowly. Engine turning over, I pulled onto the street, heading towards the storage facility. My eyes flickered to the rearview mirror, then darted away, terrified of glimpsing movement beneath the heavy tops in the dimming light. And that brings me to, now, parked just outside the roll-up door of Unit 23B, the wind size, rustling the top, covering my cargo. My heart pounds a heavy, erratic rhythm against my ribs. My mouth is desert dry. Just unload them, slide them into the darkness, lock the door, walk away. Simple actions, yet they feel monumental. Maybe then, peace. Maybe then the reflections will finally fall silent, trapped behind corrugated steel. I just want my life back. I want to stop seeing those other selves flicker at the edge of sight. Stop feeling their gaze from behind the glass. Stop knowing that my own reflection learned to move when I did not.